Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Puerto Rico Open Your Eyes. Puerto Rico Abran los Ojos. And today I have two special guests, and they both happen to be veterans. We have Huertas and Jose Miguel Velasquez, but we're going to call him Magnus. That's actually his stage name. And I am Eddie Ortiz, your host to Puerto Rico Open Your Eyes. Today's topic is going to, ironically, we're going to be discussing veterans, but we're also going to tie it into how, and not just veterans in general, but Puerto Rican veterans, right? So the topic is why U.S. veterans feel the way they do after learning the true history of Puerto Rico. And we encourage our audience to, especially our veteran audience, to chime in with comments and whatnot. Everyone's welcome as long as it's respectful and no one's disrespecting anyone or saying anything mean or bullying. We won't allow that. If I see any of that going on, I will cut off that comment and let uh, the true conversation take place. So, gentlemen, how are you both?
Good morning.
I'm doing
Good
great.
morning.
Doing
Good
Doing
great.
morning.
well. Thanks for bringing us on.
No, thanks for having us. We really, I appreciate having you both, I should say. Um, this will be one of many. As we discussed prior, I would love to venture on having many other more conversations regarding veterans because there's just a whole bunch of things we can discuss from politics to healthcare to services, so forth and so on. But in this particular one, we're going to be discussing, how veterans see themselves. In particular, I want to ask you both, what town in Puerto Rico you were born? Uh,
Okay. Yeah.
so
Personally, I was born in Alto Rey, and I was raised in Sidra. So I was born in the metro area, and then I was raised in the mountains.
nice. Okay. And Magnus?
Yeah, I was born in La Villa del Capitán Correa, Arecibo, Puerto Rico.
Nice. Okay, good. Well, welcome both of you, and thank you both for your service, and thank everyone that's watching us who's a veteran. I want to also big shout out to all our veterans. It's extremely important. Um, so tell me, you Magnus and Bertas, I know both of you are involved with other things, and in our conversations we talked about the history of Puerto Rico, and it was just curious for me to find to understand as veterans, how do you feel today, um, being a veteran, especially now that you've in dived in to learn so much history about Puerto Rico and the untold story, So I wanted to touch a little bit about that and see what your thought process are or your thinking, and maybe we can start off with Magnus and see what you have to say there.
Yeah. Well, I'll just start out just giving you and the audience a little bit of background on me. And so I'm a medically retired um, U.S. Army veteran. And most recently, I have been a petitioner uh, of the United Nations Special Committee on Decolonization, C24, in 2024 and this year, 2025. And I also have my little personal Instagram account, which is the main account that I use. And it's basically there for advocacy for autonomous reunification of Puerto Rico with Spain. And I spent just under 15 years uh, in the U.S. Army. I did have a break in service. Uh, I enlisted in 1997, right out of high school. I went to high school in the Orlando, Florida area. for you guys that are in that area. I graduated from Lake Mary High School, and after moving from Puerto Rico when I was 7, so I grew up since 7 years old onward here in the United States. I currently reside in the Daytona Beach area of Florida, Volusia County. And so my first enlistment was in 97, right out of high school. 2 weeks after I graduated, I was on that bus from Tampa to Fort Jackson and completed basic training. I did AIT, my MOS back then. I'm kind of giving my age. I was a 75 hotel, which is a 42 alpha, which is basically HR. Back then it was personnel. So I was not combat arms. My story is more of a it's not a combat arms related story. And so uh, my first enlistment was from 97. First duty station after Fort Jackson was Korea. I was stationed in Korea for about 3.5 years. I did a couple of extensions because when you're young and having fun in Korea, that's it was a completely. I didn't really want to stay CONUS. I didn't really want to stay. Part of the reason why I joined, well, two of the main reasons I joined was because of the educational benefits. The other one, of course, was to get out of the. I wanted to basically, you know, be on my own. I just wanted to be more independent. So I just wanted, and I wanted to. I initially wanted to go to Germany. I wanted to go to Europe, but in AIT, they went ahead and they give you your assignments or whatever. I think about 4 or 5 of us got to go to Korea. Everybody else stayed CONUS, stayed stateside. So after came back from Korea, I stayed about a year or so in Fort Huachuca, Arizona, the home of the military intelligence down in Sierra Vista, Arizona. It's kind of interesting. I also had some run-ins on post with the Border Patrol, with illegals coming in. So that's another episode or whatnot. But then I had a break in service right before Iraq kicked off. Right before Iraq kicked off, my MOS was over strength, so I wasn't. I forgot what it's called when they deny your ETS. But anyways, I had a break in service from 90 what is it 2003 to like 2000 late 2006. I went GS. I was a GS employee in California and well in Arizona and
Right.
California. I had a break in service, got my bachelor's degree, and I went back. I re-enlisted late 2006, and then 2000 around 2011 12 time frame I got injured. So once the medics the medical system starts kicking off, you really your career is basically put on hold. You're waiting on what the medical evaluation board, the MEV board, is going to do with you. So they recommended just early retirement. At that time I had so many years, so that's how I became retired. I wasn't able to do my full 20 years.
Magnus, Magnus, I think your volume went down as you were talking. It went a little bit further down.
Is it
Not
better now?
sure. Now
Yeah,
it's better.
yeah.
Yeah,
Now it's better.
perfect.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
So
so
yeah.
you definitely been around. You've done a lot, and once again, I want to say thank you personally uh, from one Boricua to the other because that's extremely impressive and very important um, for our people to service, right? To provide that service for the community, for the country, for the island, because a lot of people forget to mention the island as well. So, Huertas, cuéntame.
See, so yeah, so I joined out of the island in 2005. So I was one of those people where, yeah, family going, back and forth, va y viene from the United States onto the island. So I always had that growing up, right? And I always was told that, everything is better in the US, that's where you go to find opportunity and all that. And then when you don't find opportunity on the island, then you start thinking that, hey, maybe I just need to leave and to live better. And I also had that I want to go on my own, right? I wanted to just build my life, which kind of I left my little brother with my mom, so I kind of always breaks my not breaks my heart a little bit, but it just sort of kind of like it makes me feel like I abandoned him a little bit. But I always felt like I needed to go to find opportunity, right? To build something new. And like I said, that community base, everything is better in the U.S. kind of also pushed me to go to the United States. So I went to live in Massachusetts for a little bit with an auntie. Didn't work out there. I came back, but when I came back, I already made up my mind. I'm going to go join the military. So I did. I joined the Army in 2005. My first duty station was in Alaska for Richardson. Yeah, it's covered in snow during the winter. And
I
from there,
bet.
yeah, from there I deployed to Iraq in 2007 to 2008 as a 19 Delta. I was a cavalry scout. Came back and then re-enlisted. Went to Fort Knox, and then from Fort Knox I re-enlisted again because I didn't want to be there anymore. So I went to Schofield Barracks, Hawaii, and from there I deployed again, 2010 to 2011. And yeah, so the way I saw it was, like I said, a way out. But later, eventually, you kind of learn story that was never taught to you, right? Story that is not you expected from the outside power, but when it's hidden from your own people, right, by your own people, it brings you a whole different way of feeling. But as far as like how do I feel about the service, I feel proud. Like I'm not one of those who hate, either America or the service. I'm not one of those people. I'll feel proud, but I also understand that my true identity lies in a different way. But I'm sure we can get into that a little bit more.
Well, since you touched on it already, let's go for it, right? Because that is the topic here. By all means, you could just started a little segue here, and the question is, for both of you, how do you feel today, um, as veterans, after learning so much about what you weren't familiar with or what you weren't told or the true history? Um, why don't you talk a little bit about it, Puertas, and
Yeah.
and then Magnus can definitely chime in.
So yeah, back in my hometown, I went on leave. I think it was either R&R. For those who don't know, it's basically a vacation, whether it's from being on post or being deployed. And there was a tree on my hometown with ribbons with the names of soldiers that have fallen. Right? So we have that connection with service already, right? So that's one reason why I can never hate it because my own people, have given their lives to in a service that, for better or worse, it's the one in control of our land right now. But one thing I learned in the military, and this is something I carry with me, was when I was in airborne school. The way you load up the plane, whoever loads first jumps last, right? And then in this one day, my friend Jesus was behind me, and I was just thinking, what if I could just jump first? Because my thought process at the time was it would make me afraid, but it would make the memory more meaningful. Then he taps my shoulder and he says, "Hey, you want to switch?" So I switch. And then from that experience, I learned that fear is not something to just get rid of, it's something you can embrace. It'll make the memory more meaningful later in life. So I learned that in the military, and I carry that with life. So I can never really push that out, always go against that, right? But there's this other side of me where it understands that the reason why we are the way we are is because of a history where our people were sterilized, right? Our people were bombed. Families were surveillanced to where it wasn't just them, but the people around them.
So you're referring to what most people know is called las carpetas,
Yeah,
which is basically, for the audience to understand, for those who are not familiar, there was a period in time in Puerto Rico where the government of the United States were literally spying, and this is during the era of Pedro Albizu Campo, and
yeah.
I believe, and oh no, sorry, further up. But the point is, there was a period where they were all being surveilled because there was a huge movement of independence, and so the government was trying to suppress those people from making too much noise, and that's where the carpetas came in that you're referring to.
Right. And there was a comment I saw once where a man was giving the story of his mom, where he brought independent literature to the house, and his mom was terrified and had him throw away the book or whatever he had, and she was terrified of it. So when you put the stories together and you see this, it creates a conflict, right? To where there's no hate over here, but there's also the story here that's mine, that was done against us. So yeah,
Hmm.
there is a conflict, and I think this is a conversation where maybe more people joining in will help all of us kind of make sense of it.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that. And Magnus, what is your observation or your thoughts?
Yeah. My first thoughts was actually in my early childhood. Both of my grandfathers from my paternal and maternal side are U.S. Army veterans. My paternal side served in World War II in Curacao, and then my maternal grandfather served in Korea. Um, my father never went active duty, but he did enroll in the ROTC program in the 70s in University of Puerto Rico Mayagüez campus. So I already had this military background basically, and so since I was a boy, small boy, I had a favorable view of service. And I wasn't particularly the brightest or the sharpest tool in the shed in high school. I didn't really have good grades. So again, earlier I mentioned that the whole benefits of education. So that's kind of like what drove me to do the military route. Once I was serving, I didn't really experience any kind of like racially discriminatory interactions. The only thing I can remember, it was in basic training, and we were trying to qualify. That's part of the basic training. You got to qualify with your weapon. And I remember my drill sergeant calling me Veracruz because he just saw my last name. And usually, you know how generally speaking, a lot of Anglo Americans, they don't really take the time to really, that's not like a big focus. It's like, hey, even in English, if they can't pronounce a name, they'll just, hey, alphabet, come over here, something like that. So it's nothing, uh, but yeah, that was the only thing I can really remember. Now, as far as, well, I was active duty. Now, as far as the whole, uh, misconnect here is that not just in the military, but I think I think we are currently living with an identity crisis as a Puerto Rican people
Yeah.
because of our unique history. A lot of people like to say we were a colony of Spain, and a lot of times that whole history, the majority of our history is basically sidelined, and everything starts in 1898 forward.
Hmm.
And so I purposely, I think the we'll call it the system or whatever, we grew up in with this like identity crisis of, are we Americans? Well, we kind of are in the island if we're born there, but we don't have representation in Congress. We can't vote for the president, but yet we can, our when we're kids, our adults, they can identify as Republican, Democrat. They can vote in the primaries. So there's this big kind of revolu for all intents and purposes. It's just like a mess, really. So going to the military experience, speaking for myself, I did already go with this uh, idealized, kind of compartmentalized mind frame that my heritage is Spanish, Puerto Rican, but I had to put that aside. And the reality is, we're thrusted in this system, and so well, there's nothing else. So we got it. I have to choose this path, and so we begin like to cover up our foundation of being Spaniards, uh, the blood that runs in our veins, our names that we carry. That has to be put on, compartmentalized, and then we're starting identifying with the U.S. So after service, this reunificacionismo, basically, I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know, I was still plugged into the matrix. I didn't, uh, um, as many Puerto Ricans, we just do what we got to do we got to make a living, we got to support our families, all that stuff takes precedence over anything else.
Mhm.
Eventually, I discovered this reunification movement, and that was the red, the red pill, basically, where it's like, man, I have this nagging sense, like I'm proud of my statutory American citizenship because I was born in the island, but there's still this like misconnect that I don't quite feel like while I didn't experience racism or whatever personally, there is still that misconnect. If we're in our family unit and we bring like an American estadounidense or whatever to our girlfriend, wife, whatever, there could be a room full of Puerto Ricans there, and guess what happens? Immediately, boom, we're all talking in English. So it's like this kind of like misconnect. But when I found the reunificacionismo kind of movement, that's what red pilled me, and that's when I started really digging into wait these these distant little echoes of what our blood tells us is like yeah we are part or we belong, but we're not part of. Uh, Very
Right.
synonymous with how the island status is. So that's when everything kind of started kind of flipping for me. And then I developed like, let me start the process of what does that mean? I'm a veteran. I serve proudly. I view myself in this way. In my personal opinion, the VA has been wonderful to to me. I don't have anything negative or anything like that to say about it. But still, I there's a hole in me. There's a hole in my soul. There's a part of me that is missing that I have to compromise being a civilian in the civilian world, having all this experience in the army. And look, Huertas has a different story. He was combat arms. I wasn't. So, I wasn't on the front lines, but we have this, we Puerto Ricans have served proudly for generations now, but we come back to the real world, quote unquote, and yeah, we deal with the the general veteran experience of reconnecting to civilian that we carry our scars, mental and physical, but yet on top of that, our little segment of the population, our little segment, we still dealing with these things, and then we see the political turmoil, particularly after Maria, and then we see, you know, so that's kind of like what in that whole maelstrom of just identity crisis and all that stuff, this has come to the forefront where you have to face you essentially you have to have that turning around where it's like, man, uh, there's other groups of veterans that can completely that don't have to deal with this. But I know, Hortas and I have talked offline. Like we share a lot of these untalked about kind of layers of the intricacies of us being Puerto Rican U.S. veterans. And if there's two of us, there's got to be more people that
Yeah, I
have the
want to
same
Magnus,
touch on
experience.
you just said something that caught my interest. So when you say that Puerto Ricans who are veterans or in the military are unique in a sense because there are other Americans who serve in the military who don't necessarily go through what Puerto Ricans go through because we have this struggle of identity. We
Yeah.
want to, we feel proud being Puerto Ricans and we don't want to betray our people by serving in the military, but, we have to do what we got to do.
Yeah,
Is that kind
we
of,
are where we are. You know, there's not you can't. We have to accept the situation that our society, our population is in. For example, you touched on uh, that reunification with Spain, right? You learn our history, right? 1508, if I remember right, is when Juan Ponce de Leon went to the island. Right? That's kind of like where our history specific to Puerto Rico begins. And the Pilgrims didn't get to Plymouth, I think it is, until 16 something. Right by then, we already had commerce going through the island. It's we've Our people, our ancestry has been here for literally over 500 years. Our coat of arms, it's older than this country itself, right? And that's one thing I tell people, hey, we're part of the US. Okay, show me what story is mine and show me how many Puerto Ricans came on the Mayflower. Like, no, we were already here. Then you learn this one thing because I grew up in the Big Brother, right, came and saved us from the mean Spanish people, right?
Mhm.
And now this American history begins in 1776, right? Then you learn that Conde Bernardo de Galvez helped American independence. There is a USS Navy ship named after him, and
You're
by
talking
George
about the
Washington's
Spaniard.
account,
You're
yeah,
talking
he
about
was
the
named.
Spaniard, correct?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
and the city of Galveston, Texas, is really Galvez. But go
so
ahead.
you then learn that that heritage they supposedly saved us from helped them even become a nation. And then this happens, right?
So, so,
Cuba and
so
Puerto
what you're
Rico. So
what
it's
you're touching on is basically, if I got this correct, what you're saying is that the Spaniards helped the United States military wise become independent, which is something that most
yeah,
people don't know or don't talk about it or they keep it hidden.
yeah.
And, and
If you go to the Navy's website, if you just go and Google USS Galvez, you'll see an article there by the Navy itself, saying that his contribution was instrumental to the independence of America. America didn't, because when you come from our perspective, is America did it all by itself, a bunch of ragtags, and then the French helped out. Spain completely outside of it. And then you realize, no, America had a bunch of people helping them. A lot of Hispanics helped America become a country. And then I'm supposed to deny that heritage and completely submit to this one. It's like I don't even celebrate Thanksgiving anymore because for that reason, it's like I want to celebrate my heritage. I don't want to hate others. I don't want that. But why can I have my own heritage exactly as it is in that continuation the way it was supposed to be? Like, why can other people create their own identity, future, self determination, as they call it, but we're supposed to submit to somebody else's? And then say if you want your self determination from your true ancestry, because Puerto Ricans and Spaniards, Peninsulares and Criollos, so to speak, for this purpose, let's separate them. They fought together on the island. The first nation to take over the island is the U.S. Everybody else we sent packing. Everybody else we sent packing out of it. Now I'm
And you
supposed
want
to.
to elaborate who's everyone else because to the viewers and most people out there, they don't understand that native Puerto Ricans fought side by side with the Spaniards in basically, like you said, send everyone packing. Those were the English, the
Yeah,
Dutch, anyone else, guys? There were a few people, a
yeah,
few countries
Holland, the
that were
French, the
trying to
British.
invade Puerto Rico. And thanks to our Puerto Rican brothers and sisters, they pretty much, stood side by side. Is that correct, Magnus?
yeah, and I also want to make this kind of like a personal connection and a personal outreach to not just the veteran Puerto Rican community, but just Puerto Rican community in general. One thing that has to be realized and that we have to talk about and come to terms with is that historical events prove that our ancestors repeatedly from the beginning have defended every single invader to la isla de Puerto Rico. And we defended it not as the island of Puerto Rico, but we were defending Spanish imperial sovereign soil. Okay? So our heritage, we have to have that, we have to come to that realization and embrace it because it wasn't just 1898 and then here we our history starts. It through
Exactly.
through where I was born, La Villa de Capitan Correa. just Capitan Correa. Yeah, we hear about that, but that's not talked about enough. And but when it's talked about is in the context of Puerto Rico being like its own little independent thing, which it wasn't. Capitan Correa and about, I think it was 30 uh, of just citizens. You know, they had the Minutemen, right, in New England. They had the Minutemen. We had Minutemen too, and they took part in 1702 against the British invasion during the Spanish
Yeah,
War of Succession. So they took so Great Britain took advantage of that crisis in the peninsula, and they attacked not just Puerto Rico because San Juan is still the only walled city. It's a medieval walled city in reality. So, and it has never been conquered. No invader has ever taken it. So what did the British do? They go under the underbelly. Arecibo was one, if not the most important port, but it wasn't as defended. As a matter of fact, if you go now to La Puntilla in Arecibo, there's some ruins of the fort, and it's abandoned. But there was a there was a fortification there, but it wasn't really. It was the soft underbelly. So in 1702, the British come down, and Capitan Correa, defending Spanish sovereign imperial territory, took a bunch of Minutemen and slaughtered completely. It was a slaughter of Spanish Puerto Ricans defending the empire against the British invader. It's really sad that in Arecibo right now there's not even a marker, because to this day you can go to La Puntilla in Arecibo and you can see the battlefield and there are recreations, but there's no marker. There's no marker. You know how you go to Gettysburg or you go to any battlefield, and there's a marker. None of that exists. So we have, as Puerto Ricans, we have that military tradition as part of us, but it's Spanish. It's Spanish in nature. It has nothing to do with the U.S. Fast forward to 1898. What ends up happening? The Spanish, while the provincia in 1897, just months before, really, we achieved autonomy. We already in 1898 we had achieved self-determination within our own country of Spain. We it like everything, it's a process. I'm not going to paint it pink, with rose-colored glasses. There was a process that, yeah, there was injustices or whatever. Does any Puerto Rican know that in the first constitution of Spain, the very first one in 18, I believe it was 1812 or 1802. Anyways, the first constitution of Spain. Let me back up. How many Puerto Ricans were in the Continental Congress, along with Washington and all the founding fathers? Not a single one.
Not
But
one.
guess what? But guess what? Not only in the basically the equivalent of the Continental Congress, the equivalent in Spain, we didn't just have a representative. We didn't even. It's not just okay. We had a Puerto Rican in the process, but not just any other Puerto Rican. The vice president. Let me repeat that: the vice president of and the signer of the Spanish Constitution, from Puerto Rico.
I didn't know that.
The, hello.
And that's the thing. The
So
thing is that we have our own history to uncover. That when you see it, it's much bigger, and there's so much to be proud of. Like we don't have to replace. We already have. That's one thing that I say about myself. I don't have to become like I already am, right? Like I already have a heritage and a story. Like you mentioned this in military battles. Sir Francis Drake, I believe, he's a famous captain. I think he attacked San Juan, and he couldn't take it. He couldn't take the base. So there's things that people don't know, and I think we need to start just uncovering it.
So,
mhm.
gentlemen,
Yeah.
I dare say, and it's ironic because you both touched on certain things that I've already created videos of on the show, on the podcast. and then we encourage people to look at them. And I appreciate that you both touch on it without even realizing that we already created videos on those two topics. But something that strikes me very interesting in being on focus with with the military, right, is that most of us know that when the United States came in 1898, uh, and this is something I didn't know myself until recently, um, Puerto Ricans didn't have any citizenship because it was stripped for almost 20 years up until 1917, when the United States decided to give Puerto Ricans citizenship. And it wasn't even citizenship that was 100% because we're not citizens protected under the Constitution 100%. What is it, the 14th Amendment or something to that effect? So, in essence, Congress can decide at any given time to strip that from the people on the island. But what I wanted to talk about was that in 1917, when the United States went into war, we had there were pretty much 20,000 uh, Puerto Ricans that were drafted. And I'm going to even say 20,000 Puerto Rican Spaniards, because we were Spaniards during that time, that were drafted. All right. Um, so once again, here's another piece of history where not only Spaniards helped the United States during to get independence and become a country, we did it also in 1917 when we were drafted into the war as Spaniard Puerto Ricans. But what I find very interesting, so in during the First World War, there were 20,000 that were drafted, and then the Second War, we're talking a little over 65,000 Puerto Ricans that served in the military, that actually were fought, right? They were active and they fought in both wars. What I can't fathom in my head is that today, when I look up the statistics, it shows that we have a little over 35,000 active Puerto Ricans in the military today. And it's just so interesting how today we have 35,000 active Puerto Ricans, based on what I'm researching here. I'm looking at the screen, that are in the military, but yet in World War II, we're talking about a little over 65,000 that were active and involved in the war. And then today we have, and that's not including the 10,000 today that serve in the National Guard, Puerto Ricans. And then we have a little over 330,000 Puerto Ricans who are veterans. I mean, that's mind blowing. How is that, 330,000 Puerto Rican veterans throughout all these
Yeah.
years? That's, if that's not a contribution, I don't know what is. Just to see that amount of people who actually served and are actually veterans in this country that served in the United States on since the beginning of time, right? Basically. So it's amazing, and I'm loving this conversation because you guys have put so much, icing on the cake, and you've connected so many things, and that people are not thinking. And I hope that from this conversation, we're able to get people's wheels spinning. And I want to encourage people out there who are interested in being part of the show, right, to join us. We can host a couple of people on the platform and have a conversation like we're doing now. I would love to
People who
have,
disagree.
you know what I mean?
Y-
Younger and older,
Yep.
it doesn't matter. I mean, the point is, because you're both young. If we got other people that are older and they want to have some input, I encourage that. And the reason I'm saying it sounds like I'm kind of like drifting towards the end, because we already got like 39 minutes into into
Let's go,
the
man.
conversation. Um, but it's good stuff, and I want to thank both of you because you guys add so much volume to this. That's very helpful. And again, I want to repeat. I don't want this to be the last uh, broadcast, talking about veterans and history or where we are today, where we're heading tomorrow. Um, as far as Puerto Ricans serving in the military, whether it be this military or any other military, maybe the Puerto Rican military, right? Uh, but at some point, we have to keep this up. I think this dialogue is extremely important. This is what we need.
Yeah. There's so much to talk about, but
There is.
one thing I like to point out is because there's people out there who say, well, that was in the past and this and that. Well, okay, I get it. But just because it doesn't matter to you doesn't mean that I had to abandon it. Doesn't mean that it can't matter to me, right? It's my history, right? It's mine. I don't have to abandon it because somebody might have just fully assimilated or whatnot. If it's not important to you, that's okay. I respect that. But don't tell me I'm stuck in the past when you celebrate American independence every year. That's still the past.
See,
But
but
people are
that's
being selective on what
hypocrisy.
they celebrate.
That's hypocrisy when they say that, because in my chatter, when I see the comments from people and there's conversation about autonomy with Puerto Rico and Spain, I see a lot of people making comments about, oh, well, back in the past, and those are the people who stole our gold and so forth and so on. So make up your mind. So if you want to make you comment, if they want to comment to you that that's in the past, then why you keep bringing up the gold?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
it doesn't make sense. You got decide, te haces rolo o te peña, uno de los dos. You can't do both at the same time. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
that's the thing. It's because you respect that there's going to be dissenting voices. That's fine. The problem I have is when they basically ask you or they tell you or expect of you to abandon like your history in place of a new one, right? Like celebrating Thanksgiving, American independence, that's the past. You're celebrating it every year and something that has nothing to do with you. But you asking me to abandon celebrating my own history from my own ancestry, and it just doesn't make it, to me it doesn't make any sense. I respect it, but we don't need approval to no people need approval for somebody else to celebrate their own history.
I agree.
Mhm.
Magnus, you're probably going to have the last word.
Oh, okay. I didn't know we were wrapping up because it's such a it's such an exciting for me. It's exciting and a topic to newly explore that has never really been even talked about. So I'm looking forward, making this a series, and I'm looking forward to particularly Puerto Rican veterans, Puerto Rican American veterans, not just that may be sympathetic to these concepts and to our conversation, to come forward, reach out through Puerto Rico Open Your Eyes. We also have another uh, organization for political activism in our initiative. And
Mention it.
but
You can mention it.
so it's the National Puerto Rico Spain Initiative, which you're talking to members of that organization. Our president is the mediator here, Eddie Ortiz. I'm the vice president, and then Huertas is part of the
Remember,
organization as well. He's part of the board. It's a startup nonprofit that we're launching this year to not just from the educational and not just from the cultural aspect, but to turn this into a political movement to represent those of us that just like I said in my speech at the UN, for us to represent those other Spanish Puerto Ricans that are disaffected, that they know that there's a status quo system that's stacked up against us, a lot of disaffected population that are not even voting in these plebiscites. Part of our initiative is to advocate for the inclusion of reunification of Puerto Rico as an autonomous community of Spain, not as a colony, not as a whatever they want to paint it. No, a modern autonomous community, which in a lot of ways, and if not in most ways, is even superior to not just what we had in 1897, but what was instituted and imposed on us in 1952 with the Estado Libre Asociado, with the Commonwealth status that has every one thing I think most of us can agree is that it's obsolete. It's time. That's why you have the independentista going their way. You have the status quo maintaining the Reds and the Blues, el Partido Popular y los PNP. They're still administrating the colony. They're still, so there's a lot of room here for different paths to take, and the reunification path, the autonomous path, the true autonomy, the true Spanish autonomy, which is different than what even los populares are trying to keep, which is far superior. So one of the main fights for our initiative is to found and to project our initiative to include in these plebiscites, and again, not just non-binding, but binding plebiscites, to include as a decolonization option the reunification of Puerto Rico as an autonomous community of Spain. So if you guys have a chance to check that out, and even those people that completely disagree, hey, come on, let's talk about it. We're one people. We want, those that are sympathetic, but also most importantly, those that disagree, statehooders, independent, all those people. Come on, let's work as a people and move ourselves forward.
Especially,
I agree. Why don't we let's do an episode on that? For the next show, just so that people totally understand what does autonomy means. And just like you said, it's not territory and it's not a colony. So we're gonna leave it at that. But we definitely have to talk about it because you guys have a lot to contribute. And if there are other people out there that want to be part of the show, please hit me up. You can hit me up at Puerto Rico Open Your Eyes at gmail.com, and then we will definitely have a conversation, and then you can be part of the show and debate, right, or whatever. And that's it, because there's nothing wrong with healthy debate.
Yeah, and just shameless plug also for our organization. It's www.t as in tango, N as in November, P as in Papa, R as in Romeo, I as in India. So TNPRSI. Oh, I forgot the Sierra. So TNR, the National Puerto Rico Spain Initiative. So .org. So you can reach out to us through tnprsi.org.
Perfect. Gentlemen, I want to thank you both. This is great. We got to keep doing this. Feel free to, invite other people. Once we post this, share. Let's get the word out. Let's have the dialogue. Let's get Puerto Ricans to unite, regardless of ideology, regardless of whatever the case may be, because at the end of the day, we all eat rice and beans. El arroz habichuela es lo que hay con cerdo, con pasteles. Yo quiero pasteles sin ketchup. I don't know about you guys, but I don't want no ketchup. Mine is without ketchup.
That's a whole other
ever since I was little, even in La Isla, I always had ketchup. Hey, fight me. Fight me. Yeah.
We might
I'm team ketchup. I'm team ketchup.
Okay. Gracias, muchachos. Saludos y bendiciones para los dos. Muchas gracias por el servicio militar en los Estados Unidos. Les agradezco un montón. Bendiciones para su familia y bendiciones para todos los que nos están escuchando. Sí, hablamos español bastante bien, me imagino. Y ahí estamos. Bendiciones a todos y se me cuidan.
Claro que sí.